Hello everyone and welcome back to the Homebrew Workshop. In this video we're going to take a look at the Forgery Kit. We're going to take a look about what we know about it for D&D 5th edition so far and how we can make it a little bit more interesting for gameplay purposes. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Forgery Kit. So what exactly do we know about the Forgery Kit so far? We know that it's a type of tool, we know that it costs 15 gold pieces and that it weighs 5 pounds. We also know that it allows you to add your proficiency bonus whenever applicable, but it will really depend. What does that mean? Well, here's what I would propose. I propose that we design a system here that allows for the completion of 2 different goals. Goal 1 is that, usually, from our goals, that you can use this as a trade to earn money. Goal area 2 is that you have a means of active production to highlight your interest with the Forgery Kit. Now, these are fairly challenging. Forgery is both an art and a deception. Its nature as a trade is a commonly guarded secret, with forgers typically being criminal in nature. Forgeries of art and forging is seen as a criminal act. As such, forgers will usually work in association with a thieves guild, but that's not necessarily always true. They can work completely alone. It may be something that one person in your party has proficiency with, and they really only pull it out when you really need it. What I would propose to fulfill goal area 1 is that you can be contacted for work as a forgery. Now, this will depend on if you've chosen with your DM to actually have some sort of a criminal contact or ties to a criminal organization, or if you have a reputation as being a forger. But that will really depend, because it gets really sticky around, do you have a reputation as a forger and how are you not in jail right now? Because for the most part, these things will usually be illegal. Now, much of the time, when these forgeries are discovered, the individual carrying it or its creator are arrested. As such, these production of these kinds of materials, be they documents, seals, art, or signatures, require a very deft and skilled hand. So that means that you are a commodity for whoever may be able to utilize you from a criminal syndicate standpoint. They will very likely have a number of individuals that are trained with a forgery kit and capable forgers in this own right. But if you're on your own, you kind of forfeit that first level of complexity. And then you can lean more into, at least very least, goal area 2. Goal area 2 is where this all kind of ties into how you can forge a document. When a forger wants to create a forgery, no matter what the kind, if it's art, a document, signage, anything else like that, you really just need a reference. You need a reference piece that allows you to see what the real thing actually looks like. This, in terms of how I've designed a system to allow you to forge things, is the first of kind of these 3 stages. Once you have these items, you can undertake the rest of the 3 stages. The 3 stages being, of course, investigation and inspection, material procurement, and forgery creation. Ultimately, this whole thing should feel like a segment out of a heist movie to some extent. So, the initial stage is the investigation and inspection. Once you have your reference piece, you should be able to look at this, and during this stage of the forging process, the forger should be inspecting the original reference piece, identifying any unique markings, any other indicators of its validity, to make sure to include it in the final forged piece. This stage of the forgery process helps to set the DC for kind of how the investigation of it holds up. Maybe the pot that you're hoping to mimic is using a very specific sort of clay, and if you are unable to pick up on that, then it might stand out. Maybe there's a very specific notch in someone's royal seal that you very, very clearly need to not miss, because it's something that you could totally see being a purposely placed imperfection that they would know to look for. So, typically, this stage will require a skill check. It's just a single skill check, and it will really vary based on your DM's choice of the DC. But looking at the investigation and inspection table here, the rolled outcome can be one of 4. There can be a critical success, a regular failure, or a critical failure. Typically, the skill that you would use for this, since it's more planning based and not necessarily designing or creating by this point, would be one of the intelligence based skills like investigation, history, nature, arcana, something of those kinds of skills to be able to actually get a bead on what this piece is and how it is unique. Maybe it was made with a very specific type of clay that really only a nature check would be able to tell you about. Maybe it has runes within it that you definitely don't want to mess up because you're trying to sell this to a mage, and so an arcana check would be important. Otherwise, the DC modifier of these kinds of rolls, whatever it is, if your DM tells you that it's a success, or if you were to roll a natural 20 or a natural 1, will add up at the very end. So for now, we'll skip those and we'll go through the rest of the stages. The next stage is material procurement. During this stage of the forging process, the materials identified in the prior stage are procured and prepared for use. Materials such as some sort of a specific ink, specific clay for ceramics, or specific paints for a painting. These materials and the refinement into the proper form to be able to fool somebody of even well-trained eye can be done with another skill check. This skill check operates really the same way. And it may call for another intelligence-based skill check, but it could very easily call for another sort of a check, maybe wisdom, dexterity, or strength-based for the actual refinement of the material. Maybe you have to be able to recognize that the noble uses a very specific type of ink harvested from this one particular region and one specific creature. And so now this part of the stage is, well, how do I get a hold of that same ink? Or at the very least, how do I properly fake it? And so from there, the material procurement and refinement comes in. Maybe you can't get a hold of this ink because it's not something that's readily available to the public. But potentially you could fake some normal ink to be similar enough. Those kinds of things are the refinement processes that we're talking about here. As this worked before, looking at the materials procurement and refinement table, critical success, failure, critical failure, these adjustments to the DC. We'll not worry about that one for now either. The final step is forgery creation. This is the final stage of the actual forgery process. It's where you actually create the forgery itself. Now that you've inspected it and identified any markings that you should be aware of, gotten the proper materials to be able to actually create the thing, now it's down to it. Final roll. One check. Utilizing what you know about the original, as well as the appropriate materials, you should be capable of creating a near-perfect likeness. A skill check is usually going to be a dexterity-based check, but it isn't necessarily going to be that. Typically, it could be a sleight of hand check, but your DM may call for any check that they feel is applicable for the forgery. Forging a signature of a powerful mage may mean making an arcana check to get the latent magic that's within it to be the actual identifiers. Instead, you may also have a forging of a proper metal kind of statue or a small seal that may be better suited as a strength check. Regardless of whatever the skill is chosen, the completion of this stage completes the actual forgery itself. And same as before, looking at the forgery creation table, there's critical success, failure, and critical failure, with the DC modifiers available there as well. So those DC modifiers add up to some extent. Once your forgery is complete, you may determine the quality DC. This quality DC is equal to 8 plus your proficiency bonus, plus whatever you ended up getting for the 3 stages DC modifiers, good or bad. Whatever you succeeded on, whatever you failed on, all come into this check. For an individual to determine that the forgery is actually a fake, they have to succeed on an investigation check against that quality DC. That makes it possible for you to create something, potentially something that is extremely convincing, at the highest number, what you're really looking at is 8 plus potentially the +5, we'll say, for a proficiency bonus, plus another 15 if you get 3 natural 20s throughout this process, which will make it so that even some of the people that maybe created it would have a hard time spotting the difference. That's it for the Forgery Kit. Thank you all for watching. This is a little bit more of a challenge because there isn't necessarily a downtime trade production path for everybody. Now, work with your DM in terms of how it works for your story, but as you gain more and more of a reputation, you may have a more underground following in how you can be hired to create reliable forgeries. But that's it for now. Be good to one another, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!